These are not meteorites, they're dials made to look like meteorites.
But also they keep producing these watches, which means there is a lot of...
These are all trade secrets, so no one will tell you how they create the surface.
Explain me as a watchmaker, what do you see on this dial?
I would love to remove this dial and look at the back.
What they are buying is an authentic Meteorite.
Having two in the same location in the same city, yeah, good luck. I don't think that's something that would be possible.
We were talking and you told me in your early 20s, some of your friends bought cars, and for the same price you bought your first good watch. What I'm thinking is that people at your age, they basically bought a liability, what we call in business, and you made an investment, because who knows, if you didn't buy that watch, maybe you wouldn't be here now.
True. So actually, it's a good thing I still have the same friends, and at least one of them told me, you know what, you made the right decision. So yes, indeed, the watch was a better investment than the car itself. So, and I still have the watch and they don't have the cars. So.
And you have a car now, right?
And I do have a car now.
I saw several watches on your desk the other day when we were talking, and one question I'm curious about, have you ever worked with the Meteorite dial? Because that's our topic today that we're going to discuss.
It's a very interesting topic. However, I have never worked with the Meteorite dial because they are rare. So that's one of their characteristics.
91% of the Meteorite is iron, which means that they are very, very hard to work with, very rigid, and I wonder how complex this process is for the watchmakers, because as far as I understand, the rock itself is not that expensive for the watch companies to acquire, but the watches are quite expensive.
It's not the fact that meteorite can be obtained, a rough meteorite piece can be obtained at a low cost. It's always the amount of work and care that's brought into manufacturing it. So I've never seen or experienced meteorite dial manufacturing. I can only imagine how the process would be, and I'm very sure it would look something like finding the right piece, first of all. Although meteorites are easily obtainable throughout specialized gem outfits, you would have to find the right one, which has the most intricate patterns. The patterns that we often see on the dial, first of all, is the crystalline structure of iron and nickel. And this cannot be achieved in a lab, this crystalline structure here on Earth. And our minerals do not resemble anything like the crystalline structure of the meteorite that's in space.
The first Meteorite dial watch was produced in 1986, which was a Corum watch, and you see that now on the screen. Let's take a closer look, and I want you to explain me as a watchmaker, what do you see on this dial? Because when I compared this watch, which was the very first one, and modern Meteorite dial watches, Omega, Rolex, etc., there is a huge difference when it comes to the patterns, when it comes to the finishing. What do you see here?
It's an interesting dial. I mean, although we did say no two meteorite dials are the same, the patterns on this one looks very interesting. It almost looks like a painting, an oil painting.
That's true. Very rough, right?
Yeah, very rough. It has edges. It could lead me to believe that maybe the acid wash process was not all that well developed, and it might have, ate away at some of the elements and let other elements remain, because that's how the acid works, right? It attacks portions of the mineral or the metal that you're trying to highlight, and it will leave some of the other elements untouched, so it creates sort of mountains and valleys and brings out the texture. It's a very simple dial. Dauphine hands, very simple as well. So it draws the attention directly to to the dial and nothing else. Even the branding is on the case and not on the dial itself. The other element that I like on this dial is, although challenging, because I can imagine how challenging it is to work with meteorite, we just explained it, is the aperture, the opening for the moon phases to show through.
I wanted to
They
say
just,
that. I would say that's my favorite part because logically so powerful. The moon
yeah,
phase on a meteorite dial, beautiful.
exactly. And the Corum chose not to put a date aperture. They chose to have the date running around the dial itself, which is interesting also. It gives a lot of character to the watch. And it also increases the symmetry. So imagine if you had a cutout for the date, even at 6 o'clock on this watch, I think it would take away from the beauty. But having the moon phase, I guess, meteorites come from outer space. Moon is still in outer space, to my knowledge. So it sort of correlates with one another.
So in the watch world, for watch enthusiasts, there is this attraction towards customization, and I know that many collectors and people who love watches, they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to obtain customized watches. And turns out acquiring a Meteorite dial watch automatically grants you this privilege to have a customized watch, something that has a fingerprint that is very unique.
Exactly. It's yours. It can never be replaced. Uh, it's not. Although they are manufactured in the same way, the piece that you are getting is unique. It's also a billion years old. We found out, or several billion years old, and it can never be replaced with with that same element. So that's part of the charm of owning something like this, similar to gemstones. But gemstones are coming from this planet, and this is coming from outer space. If we forget about the space value, there's still the value of rarity in that lies within these dials. I know that most of these dials come from Africa, from Namibia, and Namibia has created a law that prohibits the use of meteorites. So whatever they have that has fallen in their land, they've created a special national monument, and you're not able to use or cut or deface or transport these meteorites anymore. So this means that probably the brands have acquired these meteorites dialed before the laws that were enacted, and so they have pieces of meteorite, but they're very limited.
But also they keep producing these watches, which means there is a lot of meteorites still, right?
Yeah, well, we do have a lot of meteorites, but the rarity is also in the nicest ones.
I have heard that many collectors, this is another challenge for them basically, is that when they are acquiring a Meteorite dial watch, they are also asking the ADs to bring them several watches so that they choose the pattern that they love.
Wow.
So this is a trick that maybe viewers who want to obtain the watch, they can do the same, right?
So depending on how exclusive and rare the watch is that you would like to buy, I don't know if the authorized dealers would be able to bring you more than one.
I went to the store and I tried this trick. I was like, "Could you please bring another one so I compare the texture?" And they said, "No, it's the only one." So I said, "Okay."
Yeah, I mean, like we said, meteorite is rare. Watchmakers using it in their watches is even more rare. Having two in the same location in the same city, yeah, good luck. I don't think that's something that would be possible. I mean, you might see another person. Imagine, I've been in watchmaking all these years, and I have seen meteorite dials, but very few times. I mean, I could probably count it on one hand how many times I've seen meteorite dials. So they're rare.
Take a look at this watch, please. The Formex Essence 39. So this is a gold-plated watch. Very beautiful. I love the texture and everything. But one thing I want to discuss here is please zoom in on the date window. And it appears to be so thick. Where does this depth come from?
Yeah, you pointed out something very interesting. The dial in this case, it appears to be very thick. Generally, dials are less than a millimeter thick. I would love to remove this dial and look at the back, because when we look at the back of the dials, we see a lot of indications of how it might have been manufactured. And also, flatness is another issue. When you're working with natural materials, you cannot bend meteorite. It's very brittle. It will break. So you would have to make sure that when you're cutting these pieces, that you have an absolute flatness. If not, your hands that go around the dial, it will start touching the indexes on one side if it's not a true flat. So these are also some of the challenges that I'm sure manufacturers will face. We were talking about printing on the dial directly, and here we can see that they went ahead and printed their brand and
They printed a lot of stuff actually,
Yeah.
the brand name, the logo, and when you put this in contrast with the Corum watch, it's very interesting to see the evolution of technology, right? Or maybe the techniques of watchmaking over time dealing with the meteorite.
Yes, it could be technology. It could also be the decision of the manufacturer. On the Corum, we saw that there was a lot of peaks and valleys. There was a lot of texture. On this Formex, we see that it's very flat. Now, was it done willingly? Was the dial manufactured and maybe polished and sanded down to have a uniform thickness to be able to print on it? Again, these are all good questions that only the manufacturer of the watch would be able to tell us.
For me personally, the most important watch with the meteorite dial is, can you guess which one?
The constellation?
No, I think it's the
No?
it's the moon watch, because
Okay.
the legend connected to that watch, I mean, it's the most important watch to have the meteorite. They have the subdials, the Omega produced, and it is so beautiful and logically very much justified, let's say, right?
Yes, it's a space
Complementing the
watch.
history
So,
of, yeah.
yeah,
But I'm gonna
it's a
ask you,
space watch. And
yeah.
yes, tell me.
I'm gonna ask you, what is your favorite watch that has a meteorite dial? I'm sure you have thought about this.
So, not very long, but since we are talking about meteorite dials, legend says, again, I don't know, legend says that Rolex has beautiful meteorite dials, and they're generally very uniform. The patterns are absolutely beautiful. Again, I would like to see these watches firsthand to be able to touch and feel them, look at it with my own eyes, not pictures. With pictures, unfortunately, we don't have the play of light. We don't have that depthness that shines through. So I will refrain from choosing one that I like the most. Maybe in the near future, if I'm able to see some of them, I would like to compare the Speedmaster or the Rolexes and even some other brands.
Definitely. And since you mentioned Rolex, I see that celebrities love meteorite dials too. And I found this image that you see on the screen, Drake's image with the beautiful Rolex Sky Dweller. Now, the Sky Dweller is my favorite Rolex watch. I love it. And with the meteorite dial, it looks like a perfection for me. And it's also diamond decorated.
It looks like a beautiful watch. I don't know how the setting is obtained. Is this really done by Rolex themselves, or this was an afterthought or an aftermarket diamond setting? However, what I can speak to is the challenges of the dial. So the dial itself, if you look at it closely, there's a piece of dial sort of floating in the middle where the Sky Dweller name is printed. And you can see that the dial itself completely is one piece. So there's a lot of work that was done to this dial to be able to create this watch. All levels of challenges are on this watch. So again, it's not just obtaining the meteorite itself, it's how you present it and how you manufacture it to be on the watch itself. This is what gives it its value.
Okay, and as we slowly approach to the end of our conversation, which is very enjoyable, I love it, and I'm sure our viewers too. I think
Hopefully.
some of them, yes, I think some of them watching this conversation, they might have thoughts about buying a Meteorite dial watch. Why? Because they are quite affordable and the price range is very, very wide. And you can find a Meteorite dial watch under $2,000 and you can find a watch that, has a very, very high price, above 30, 40,000. How can the buyers, watch enthusiasts, be sure that what they are buying is an authentic Meteorite?
So, interesting question. Identifying the meteorite just by looking at it, it could be very difficult. If I would be able to remove the dial and inspect it, turn it over to see how it is indeed manufactured, that could be a good indication. If what our viewers are interested in buying the meteorite dials in the more attainable range, again, the reputation of the retailer or the brand comes into the mix. Like anything, do you have trust in this brand or this retailer or this brand who's manufacturing the watch? Is the first thing. The other is if you look at let's say a website and all the meteorite dials on the different iterations of the watch are all the same pattern, that might be an indication that these are not meteorites. They're dials made to look like meteorites. So, and in our world, in this industry, it's always good to deal with people who have a good reputation. So it would be hard to say looking at by naked eye if it is a real meteorite or not. The Formex that we were looking at earlier, how I would check, let's say as a first test, is to look at the date aperture like we did. You can see that the entire depth appears to be having the same texture. So it's not just an element that's applied. It's not just the texture that's on the surface. It appears to be through and through the dial itself. So that could be an indication.
Thank you, Grigor. What a great conversation.
My pleasure.
And
My pleasure, indeed.
the good news here is that we're going to have more conversations about watches.
I spoke to a lot of technical information, but this is the first of many videos like this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much and see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.